Hello, and welcome to the We Need Water podcast. My name is Michael Brent, and I'm your host. I'm the Water Resources Manager for Cascade Water Alliance in King County, Washington. Cascade is a municipal water supplier providing drinking water to more than 380,000 residents. In this podcast series, we're going to explore water. Water is essential for our existence, and I want to inform you on certain aspects of water you may not have thought about. Things like the safety of drinking water, the effects of climate change on water supplies, and how watersheds are managed. I want you to truly care about water and make it your personal mission to become a steward of this incredible resource. Most of us take it for granted that what flows from your tap is safe to drink. American cities and utilities pride themselves on providing safe, clean drinking water. And yet, in places like Flint, Michigan, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Jackson, Mississippi, there have been serious water crises in recent years that contradict the notion that our drinking water is safe. So, how safe is your drinking water? What measures are taken to protect your water? Who is responsible for maintaining the resource? Should you have a water filter in your home? And do we all have a role in managing our water resources? Today, we're going to talk to someone who can help answer those questions. Jessica Atlakson is an environmental geologist with Redmond, Washington. For the past 4 years, she's worked to protect Redmond's drinking water aquifer and to ensure that Redmond's streams are safe for recreation and aquatic life. Good morning and welcome, Jessica. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having
I'd
me.
like to start by having you discuss Redmond's water system. Exactly where does Redmond's drinking water come from?
Yeah, so Redmond is very fortunate in that we have a hybrid water system. So, what that means is that we have two sources of drinking water, surface water and groundwater. So, residents and businesses that are located west of both Lake Sammamish and the Sammamish River receive their water from the Tolt watershed. So, this is a surface water source that's located in the Cascade Mountains. It's owned by the City of Seattle. They protect it, they have many protections in place to ensure that it's clean and safe. And then what happens is that water travels through some pipes and is delivered to municipalities, drinking water suppliers on the east side. And so Redmond is one of those. So the city of Seattle owns the watershed and the pipes, and then the city of Redmond, as a member of Cascade Water Alliance, purchases the water. So residents on the east side of Lake Sammamish and the Sammamish River receive their water from the city's shallow drinking water system, so from groundwater. This and during the summer, just as a little aside, there's such high demand for the water that we actually will supplement that groundwater source with some of the water from the Tolt watershed for residents on the west side. Um, but so the city has five water supply wells that's drilled into our shallow aquifer system, and those wells supply approximately 1 billion gallons of water a year to the city. So that's about 40% of our water
That's an
supply.
amazing statistic, I think. Over the course of the year, you pump 1 billion gallons from the aquifer, but that only makes up about 40% of the total drinking water supply.
That's right. And so we're really lucky
Right.
that we have this dual system of both surface water that we purchase through Cascade Water Alliance and our own
If
independent
there
supply
are
from the groundwater.
shortages or restrictions, you can sort of play one off the other. That's great.
Yep, exactly.
Well, so what does the city do to protect the groundwater supplies?
Yeah, that's a really important question, isn't it? Like we have the
Yes.
supply, but we want to keep it safe. Redmond, along with any other drinking water municipality in the state, follows both state and federal regulations. So these include things like collecting samples to test for different types of chemicals in the water to make sure it's safe to drink. It includes ensuring that our drinking water staff, whether they collect the drinking water samples or if they work on the pipes, that they have their proper certifications and are properly trained. But in addition, Redmond's really proactive in making sure that we do protect our drinking water aquifer. Um, so what we've done is established a critical aquifer recharge area, which we affectionately refer to as our CARA. So our CARA is the area that provides groundwater to our supply wells. So that's the area where the groundwater comes from that our residents and businesses drink. Um, so we kind of take a three-pronged approach in protecting it. Kind of the first pillar of protection is we don't want anything bad coming in. To our CARA, right? That could potentially contaminate it. So we're really involved in the development review process. Any new businesses or buildings that want to come in, we review and make sure that they have proper protections in place that will maintain our good quality groundwater. The second part of this protection program is that we have approximately 100 monitoring wells throughout the CARA, and we collect groundwater samples from there so that we just have a really good pulse on what the aquifer health is, right? And it really serves as an early warning system to our supply wells so that we can catch any problems before they actually get to the supply well. And then that third leg of protection is we do technical assistant visits to our local businesses that are located within the CARA if they have any hazardous material on site. And so these visits just help make sure that they're doing everything they can to prevent that hazardous material
I
from
see.
getting into our groundwater.
I've seen those groundwater monitoring stations that are around town. They're all painted blue, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. That's a great observation. So yeah, if you're walking around Redmond, you might see these little blue posts sticking out of the ground. That's where our drinking water staff collects samples for things like bacteria to make sure that our water system, is contaminant free. So yeah, if you're walking around Redmond and see one of those, be sure and go check them out because most of them have a little plaque on them that explain what those
Very
are.
good. Well, if a problem is detected, what happens then?
Yeah, so that's the great, we have this great program in place to find problems, but what do we do if we find one? So it really depends on what we find, right? So if it's in the supply well, so again, those are the wells that provide the drinking water to our residents and businesses. Um, we'll follow all state and federal regulations. So in the state, we listen to the Department of Health, who regulates drinking water suppliers. Um, that could include like notifications to our customers through our annual consumer confidence report or water quality report. In some cases, if it's pretty severe, we might actually have to shut the well down. And if that's the case, we'll conduct some additional investigations around to identify that source of contamination and eliminate the problem. We'd resample the supply well, and then as soon as it was safe to turn back on, we would turn that back on. And of course, the customers would be notified of the issue as well. So if the issue is found in the monitoring well, again, this is
Mhm.
the early warning system. Before it hits the supply well, we'd pretty much do the same thing. We'd sample the supply well, make sure it's still safe to drink, and then also do an investigation to find the
I would
problem and
imagine the
eliminate it.
infrastructure is such that if you need to shut down a particular well for some time, uh, there would not be an interruption in service. You can reroute the supply.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, they're all interconnected, and as I mentioned earlier, we also have the potential to use the Tolt
Mhm.
water system water as well, because all of our systems are intertied, and we can send water from
Okay.
one place to another.
You talked about communicating this kind of information with residents. So, what is the process for keeping your residents informed about the condition of their drinking water?
Yeah. So we have several mechanisms that we use to do that. Like I've already mentioned the consumer confidence report or water quality report. That's sent out to all businesses and residents on an annual basis. And what that includes is a summary of all the water
Mhm.
quality data that we collected throughout the year, as well as any interesting facts, any upgrades that we've done to our water system. We get a lot of inquiries through about our water system through emails or our customer service portal, and we'll respond to those. Um, we also have information available on our website. We have a really great website at redmond.gov/drinking water that has a lot of information about our water system. We also try to do a lot of education and outreach. we always promote Groundwater Awareness Week, and we'll send out on our social media feeds information about what you can do to protect groundwater. And we also participate in events like Derby Days is a really popular event in Redmond. And last year it was really fun. We actually, did a shared
Mhm.
booth with Cascade. Cascade promoted. Water efficiency information, and we were there to answer
Right.
questions about our groundwater supply.
Yes, I remember that. That was great. The water quality
Yeah,
report you've referenced a couple of times. That's also called the Consumer Competence Report. Yeah, and that goes out
correct.
in the
Yeah.
summertime,
hmm
if I remember.
Yeah. I think it usually hits mailboxes around
Mhm.
July
I
timeframe.
know I always watch for it. There's a lot of great information in there. It really informs you about the entire system.
Yeah, exactly. And if somebody missed it in their mailbox, it's also available on our
Great.
drinking water website as
So,
well.
what are some of the emerging water issues in our region?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the one thing that comes to the top of my head immediately is PFAS. So, PFAS stands for per and polyfluoral alkyl substances. It's kind of a
Way to give
mouthful,
it
so
the
that's why they call it
acronym.
PFAS,
Okay.
right? Exactly. So what these substances are chemicals that are water resistant. So they're found everywhere. They're found in water resistant clothing, uh, in nonstick cookware, in firefighting foam. Some of them. So yeah, it's substances that are pretty much everywhere. Um, they're really a national concern right now. EPA is working on determining, what the appropriate maximum contaminant level or the highest level that
Mhm.
can be in our drinking water should be. So because this is such a big concern, the city of Redmond's really keeping an eye on this, following the regulations so that we can be prepared to meet any of the health
Okay.
standards
Yeah,
that
I've
EPA
seen a lot of articles
sets.
from places all around the country where the groundwater supplies have been contaminated by PFAS. So,
Yeah, it's a big issue. I mean, it's found in rainwater. That's how pervasive it is because the problem is this
mhm.
chemical just doesn't break down. Once it gets somewhere, it sticks around
And
for a
we don't
long,
really
long
know
time.
the full impacts to human health yet.
Right. Yeah, exactly. EPA is working on that now. So as I said, we're really monitoring that to ensure that, we continue to serve safe drinking water. Yeah. Another big issue that I can think of is climate change. I mean, this is like a
Hmm.
worldwide issue, right? So impacts to our water supply due to climate change. So what we're doing at the City of Redmond is we're looking at our aquifer. We're using data that we've collected over the years to really figure out how the levels are changing, and just so that we keep a good pulse on that and decide what we need to do in the future for our water supply. And then the final issue that I wanted to talk about, this is that immediately came to mind as well. This is more of a probably just a city focused thing, but it could apply to other regions that use shallow drinking water
Hmm.
for their water supply. Um, our aquifer is located in our downtown and Marymore area, and that's where we have, light rail coming in, and we're really concentrating a lot of our growth in those areas because we want to take advantage
Hmm.
of the transportation there. Um, that's also where our aquifer is, and it's very shallow. So because of this increased, meeting this population demand, right? There's a lot of new, like mixed or multifamily houses or multifamily like apartments going in, and most of those have underground parking, so they're going down, into the ground. Well, we have a very shallow aquifer system. Our groundwater is only about 5 to
Hmm.
15 feet from the surface, and so when they build these parking garages, they need to pump that water out temporarily. So we call it temporary construction dewatering so that they can build, in dry, workable conditions. And so this has impacts on our supply wells. So we're, working with stakeholders, and have, come up with some policy recommendations of, how we think the city should move forward with this kind of like tension between,
Hmm.
growth and our water supply, and working through the council process to get those
I've
policy
seen some
changes
of those
implemented.
operations when they're ongoing, and it's amazing the amount of water that is
Mhm.
being pumped out of those sites.
Yes, it is.
Well,
Yeah.
shifting gears a little bit, do you think most homes should use a water filter?
Yeah, so we get that question a lot. So, first of all, water straight out of the tap is completely safe to drink. However, some people don't
Hmm.
really like that chlorine taste that you get with water sometimes, and so just a simple charcoal filter that's well maintained. That's the important part is you need to maintain your filter. That can really help with getting
Okay,
rid of that chlorine taste.
very good. Well, Redmond is a growing city. Do you think there will be enough water for the future?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to when we were talking about climate change earlier, right? So Redmond is fortunate in that we're a member of Cascade Water Alliance, and Cascade is ensuring the future needs of their members through the end of this century. So that includes things like, Cascade purchased lake taps as a additional water supply. So really, the main point is that those people who are listening to this podcast right now should just be assured that their grandchildren will
Yeah.
have, drinking water in the future. Additionally, the city of Redmond, we're taking our own precautions. As I mentioned earlier, we're measuring the groundwater level that we have and putting policies in place to make sure that we have that independent groundwater supply
Okay.
for our
Well,
future
you
as
mentioned
well.
climate change a couple of times. Do you expect that climate change will have much of an impact on the groundwater supplies?
That's a really great question and something that we've been looking at. So Redmond is really fortunate in that our groundwater supply is really the way we get more water into our groundwater is through precipitation. We're not
Hmm.
very reliant on snowpack. So that's really good news for Redmond. Scientists have predicted in our area that the precipitation isn't really going to change. It might just be when that precipitation falls. So what we've been doing at the city is, looking at our groundwater levels throughout different seasons and seeing how that's impacted and where that precipitation is coming from. So again, we're less susceptible than other sources that rely on snowpack. Um, the thing that might change is
Hmm.
when that precipitation comes. So we might have to, supplement longer with Cascade Water Alliance water into, later into the fall if that
I
precipitation
see.
is pushed out a little
Yeah,
bit.
I know in the Southwest, where the drought has been so severe for so many years, I think they're learning that the atmosphere is really changing and that evaporation is increasing considerably. And now they have to factor that
Yeah.
into their modeling of how long reservoirs will last and so forth. But if your water is underground, you kind of get a pass on that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, groundwater sources are a lot less susceptible to evaporation, obviously, than surface water sources. So that's another advantage for Redmond in having that groundwater
Wonderful.
source of water.
So, what can residents do to protect their watersheds and keep their water supplies clean?
Yeah, that's really important, right? Because just a little change, if we all make that small little change, we can make a really big difference. Um, so there's really simple things you can do as a homeowner. One thing is, we talked about some hazardous materials at businesses, but we have some pretty hazardous
Mhm.
stuff in our homes too. If you think about it, some of our cleaners and like if you change your own oil on your car, that type of thing. So just make sure that you're disposing of that properly, keeping it out of surface water and groundwater. Another thing you can do is make sure you fix your leaky cars. As you drive down the street, if you're leaking some oil that's getting into the surface water where our fish live, or, some people might drink that surface water, or it could leach into the ground. So that's another
Mhm.
really important thing you can do. Using natural yard care is a huge one, and Cascade has some great resources on gardening. So yeah, definitely check out Cascade's website for hints on that. A couple other things as a homeowner, if you do happen to own either a septic tank or a heating oil tank, make sure those are properly maintained. Yeah, and our website, we have a lot of different tips and tricks of what you can do. So you should definitely visit our website at redmond.gov/taking action, or Cascade's water site or website as well
I've
is
forgotten the
great.
exact number. I used to remember this factoid, but a quart of oil can contaminate just some unbelievable amount of water, tens or hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't take much. Yep, it doesn't
Yeah.
take much for sure. Yeah,
Very good. Well, I think that's a wonderful point. I think we often don't realize that those small actions that we can take really do have a big effect over time. And if lots of people do them, it really matters.
absolutely.
What's the one thing you would like your residents to know about their water supply?
Yeah, good question. I would say that it's safe to drink, and Redmond takes a very proactive approach to make sure it maintains
Great.
and stays safe
You
to drink.
mentioned your website. Are there other water related resources you would like to point people to?
Yeah, so definitely our websites. If you're interested in drinking water, getting more information about PFAS, our drinking water website, which is redmond.gov/drinking water, is really great. We already talked about redmond.gov/taking action. You can find tips of what you can do to protect your drinking water. Cascade, like I mentioned, also has some great resources. So that website is, let's see, cascadewater.org. And then both Redmond and Cascade has some great social media channels. So definitely check those out because both organizations are pushing out information about
Wonderful.
water quality.
Jessica, what do you most enjoy about your job?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. I would say the
Mhm.
variety that I have in my job is great. One day I could be out, taking groundwater level measurements out at the,
Mhm.
100 wells that we have across the city. And the next day, I might be at council presenting policy recommendations of how we can protect our groundwater. So, just a great variety, but all of it's really important. And I really appreciate working for a city that just really values their natural resources and takes great effort to ensure that they're protected for the future
That
generations.
is awesome. Jessica, thank you so much for being my guest today and sharing your insight on how Redmond provides clean, safe drinking water for its residents. Okay,
Yeah, thanks so
thanks.
much
We'll
for
see
having
you.
me. This was really fun.
Bye.
Bye.
As you've heard, Redmond's drinking water is safe and carefully monitored. I think that's generally true for cities in Washington and all around the country. If you watch the news, it seems like there's a lot to be worried about these days. But I don't think the safety of your drinking water should be too high on that list. Tap water is safe and inexpensive. It's there for you 24/7. There are a lot of caring people who work hard to make sure of that. Water keeps us healthy, so don't be afraid to drink from your tap. And please do what you can to help us preserve our valuable water resources. Thanks for being with me today. I hope you enjoyed this broadcast. If you did, please like and subscribe and follow us on the socials. You can find helpful information about Cascade's water conservation programs at cascadewater.org. Have a great day, and remember, we need water.